But they did not live the easiest life. They spent many, many years praying for a daughter, praying for a child. And they didn't hear anything for a long time. And then they made a promise. If you give us a child, we will give her to the temple. If you give us a child, God, we will give her to the temple. But they kept praying this prayer, never lost hope, and sure enough, God gave them a child. First, what we learn from this is the power of fervent prayer. St. Paul tells us to pray ceasingly, without ceasing. Christ himself says, whatever you seek, ask. We give up after, a month of praying, a year of praying? But after years, their prayer was heard. To teach us, don't give up in your prayer. Every prayer is always heard, by the way. Sometimes we give up praying because we don't think it's heard. Nobody's listening. Every prayer you have ever prayed is heard by God. That doesn't mean you get the answer you want. By the way, no is an answer. We just want to hear yes all the time. But every prayer you pray, God hears it. Don't ever think that your prayer is not being heard. And he heard the prayers of Hannah and Joachim, and he gave them a daughter. So they raised this daughter. They named her Mary. And at 3 years old, like they promised, they gave her to the temple. And so she goes to the temple and she's greeted by a priest named Zacharias. And so she's in this temple, and the priests are wondering, okay, what are we going to feed her? What are we going to do? How are we going to raise her? What are we going to do? And then an angel comes by. Our church fathers teach us it's the archangel Phanuel. An angel comes by with some heavenly bread. And the priests that are at the temple, they're thinking, oh, the angel's giving us bread. He's coming to give the priests bread. But the angel didn't go to any of them. The angel went to who? St. Mary. St. Mary, in a temple full of priests, was the holiest one there. A lot of times, our sisters especially, we wonder, what is our role in the church? Every key part of salvation started with women. Women were the first one to preach Christ resurrected. St. Mary is the greatest creation. Forget woman, greatest creation. Greatest person to be born. And a huge instrument of our salvation. So why do we honor her, some people ask. And some people, thinking they're doing the right thing, they'll say, we honor her because she gave birth to Christ. Sounds like a good answer. But that answer assumes that she's only holy because she gave birth to Christ. But we see here, even as a child, the angels recognized that she is sanctified, set aside for the Lord, and they gave her heavenly bread. She was already holy, which is why she was chosen to give birth to Christ. She did not become holy after she gave birth to Christ. She was set aside. She was sanctified. But what about her made her sanctified? What about her made her holy? Her simplicity. What do you think she did in the temple for all these years? For about 12 years, she spent her time learning the Word of God, sitting under the feet of priests, serving the priests, doing all these things, becoming quite humble. She didn't speak much, by the way. In fact, we see in the Gospel of Luke, we see that she kept all these things in her heart. She wasn't much of a speaker. A lot of people are like, they don't write much about Virgin Mary. Why do you guys honor her? She's not that much in the Bible. Because she never spoke. That's how humble she was. She just listened. She just served. That's what she did her whole life. Before she gave birth to Christ in the flesh, she had conceived Christ in her heart. She resembled Christ in her heart. So before she gave birth to Christ, she was in the temple for 12 years doing this. This should remind you of somebody. Christ, before he served, how many years did he go? How many years did he wait on the earth? At what age? Do you guys know? What age did he begin his service? What age? 30 years old. But for the first 30 years of his life, humble. Except for the age of 12 when he went to the temple to read and to learn and to actually teach, most of his life he spent real quiet. St. Mary was the same way. St. Mary was the same way. She learned silence. She learned simplicity. She learned humility. And so, at the age of 15, now the priests are like, okay, she's an adult. She can't stay here forever. We need to find somebody to take care of her. By the way, there was a common custom. St. Mary is not the only young woman to be brought into the temple. This happens a lot. But when they hit a certain age 15 around there, they assign her, or the girl, to an older person to protect her, to watch over her, right? And so the story goes like this. They called these elders, and these elders had 12 staffs, 12 rods, 12 sticks, if you will. And they did a prayer, and they said, whichever one the dove lands on, that is who is going to protect the Virgin Mary. And the dove landed on the staff of Joseph. Why did he need to protect her? Because she's going to conceive a child. At that time, to have a child within you, but not know who the father is or what's going on, it's a miracle, by the way. It could be dangerous for her. And so God ordered Joseph to protect her. Many people who don't read the Bible with understanding, who don't read the Bible with the church fathers, they say, oh, she was married. She had other kids. That's false. That's not true at all. If you understand the history of Judaism, the history of all of this, the culture, Joseph was just her protector. That's why you don't read much about Joseph after the first 2 chapters of the Gospel. Because he died shortly after. He was old. That's what our fathers teach us. So why does this matter? Why does this matter? Like I said in the beginning, all of the things that she did in her life were directly correlated to us receiving Christ. She went in the temple to learn. She went in the temple to be humble. She went to the temple to be simple. And by doing all of these greater than any of us have ever done, Christ chose her to be his dwelling place. And so when we say, what is the beginning of our salvation? We say, it's St. Mary saying yes. It's her saying yes. Think about how many times you say no to God. When God says to love your neighbor, nope, they did this to me. When God says give to the poor, no, I can't afford it. When God says respect your parents, oh no, they're just bothering you. We say no more times than we say yes. Let's be honest. Most of us, we say no to God more than we say yes. But St. Mary, she lived her whole life saying yes. Let it be to me according to your word. Let it be done to me. And by saying yes, she started the process of our salvation. That is why we honor her. We can't honor her enough. And this holiday is her entrance to the temple, which is the beginning of her learning the virtues that made her the mother of God, that made her our mother, that gave us salvation whatsoever it is.